This is an important message for anyone with...
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266. Wendy, I'm home.
Here's Johnny. It is a sports talk for a Wednesday. Willie P and the Pro. You can tell we've been hanging for too long. We are kind of stir crazy. We really want the white-haired wonder to return to that team. No, we really do we not? Yes, no, maybe so.
White-haired.
Oh, you're trying to say there's no hair?
That's
not nice.
That's
not nice.
I didn't say that.
That's not
No,
nice.
we were just off the air talking about topical humor and why it doesn't work when you have young people in the room.
Hey, now let's
and
stop with that talk.
I mean, really young people, and you look at The
Like
Shining,
millennials,
and Jack Nicholson chops the bathroom door down with axe and yells, "Here's Johnny!"
That's the only thing
kids
people
won't
think.
get it. What are they thinking about? Well,
it's because they have to see the whole. They have to see the whole rest of the movie. You know that guy is a crazy person. But anyway, we crazy people here with you on a Wednesday. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, Phil Kornblut is returning. You know he's not opening up a tiki bar in Garden City yet, although he has told me that this could possibly happen sometime in the near future. I think he's right now trying to raise some of that money to build that while on the golf course. We'll, again, be back with all three of us together in tow. Monday from Atlanta, SEC Media Days. Tuesday will be with Dabo Sweeney at Reserve at Lake Kiwi for his annual golf outing, and also on Wednesday and Thursday in Charlotte for ACC kickoff, and of course Corn in Atlanta all week, Monday through Thursday for SEC Media Days. We'll continue our preview of what's going on for opponents of Clemson and South Carolina. We'll look at an opponent I think that's a very, very tantalizing one on Clemson's schedule, and that is the Boston College Eagles. Their voice, John Meter-Perrell, is going to join us coming up at 7:20. A very interesting debate brought up by the folks at Sports Illustrated we'll get to in the second hour. A bogus lawsuit from the Midwest involving the FBI allegations that we'll get to also. And we did bank some time to talk about the NFL and the Players Association's feud as it relates to the national anthem. We'd made sure to give it a more prominent part of the show today because I know we had said we were going to set aside some time yesterday but never got to it. We did, speaking of SEC Media Days, find out just exactly who we will see in Atlanta, or at least who Corn will see in Atlanta, and who we'll be able a chance to talk to when the SEC media and its fans convene Monday through Thursday next week in the ATL. South Carolina will send, along with head coach Will Muschamp, their quarterback Jake Bentley, their wide receiver Deebo Samuel, and defensive end / Buck DJ Wanham. It's funny, Pro, the stability at certain positions tells a lot about who is sent from some teams, and who some teams do not send could also talk about some instability, because there are a couple of very key omissions on this list, at least if you look at some of the teams that might have quarterback controversies going into the year. Just grabbing the list, the first thing I did was look in alphabetical order, and I knew this was going to happen. I was just predicting myself. Alabama, no quarterback. Interesting.
Because they got a little controversy going on. Arkansas, if they can find a quarterback, they can run Morris's offense. Auburn, we know Jarrett Stidham, he's entrenched at that position. Florida, no quarterback.
Well, they have a quarterback. He's going to need some pixie dust from Dan Mullen. They're making sure that they can completely drench him and dredge him in the pixie dust, like you do when you pan fry a pork chop. That's what they're going to put on him, and then he'll be able to talk at the meetings when he's a junior, because he's only a sophomore.
Pixie dust is like pepper. If you put too much on anything, it's no good.
Right.
Georgia, we don't know if they go with the freshman who played great last year with two senior running backs behind him, or the flavor of the month,
Mr. Fields,
coming up. Yes. So no quarterback for Georgia. Kentucky, no quarterback.
They haven't had a quarterback.
LSU, no quarterback.
Right.
Ole Miss, with all their struggles, and then they had the bowl ban last year. Teamu is the quarterback entrenched there, so he's there. Nick Fitzgerald. Drew Lock is there. So we see the team. Tennessee.
Vanderbilt even sent their quarterback.
Tennessee has no quarterback there. Texas A&M, no quarterback.
And Vanderbilt will send theirs because, again, Kyle Shermer, I think, is going into his 8th year of NCAA eligibility in Nashville. But again, it's weird. You know, this is the one thing that I don't understand is that, and I don't understand why coaches will even allow this to even get to this point. I don't know how you go into August and not know who your starting quarterback is. Like that to me seems juvenile and futile. Because in my mind, I understand that you want to quote, ratchet up the competition, but in reality, you got to get ready for September 1, man. You can't be spending August spinning your wheels, trying out new things and figuring out, okay, what's going on with my quarterback situation. If I'm Dabo Swinney right now, I probably know who my starting quarterback is in the back of my mind. But the fact that that I don't have, I don't have the wherewithal to really go with it, and he wants to try and put this faux little competition on there, in my mind, stands to reason that there's probably some still indecision involved there.
It probably is, and all of this, in my mind, is a psychological ploy.
No, I'm not questioning Dabo's character by saying that, so don't even go there with me.
Oh, okay. All right. But you're calling him a character.
Hey, he is a character.
I think for some of the young guys, they almost want to have the sense of urgency during the summer when guys sort of get lax as far as their thinking is concerned, and want them to think football because they want them to work hard in the playbook, and they'll see how much they retain when they come back with the pre-season practice. So I think that's probably the psychological ploy there. My goodness, Alabama, at least they knew who their quarterback was. They probably didn't know who their offensive coordinator was the last 2 or 3 years, but they knew who the quarterback was. But this is interesting how some of these teams that's been on top and in the playoffs every year, and suddenly they enter into the fray ostensibly without their quarterback entrenched in the position. So this is interesting coming up with Alabama, and speaking primarily of Alabama and Clemson.
It certainly is an interesting situation. And the Georgia one, the Georgia one should be, folded up, case in point, Jake Fromm is your starter. The fact that there are people who are probably the same kind of people who are talking about wanting Trevor Lawrence there, wanting Justin Fields to start ahead of Fromm, I'm like guys, Fromm only started 1 year. Like, quit trying to have the future be now. It's not like Jake Fromm was bad. Jake Fromm led them to a college football playoff championship game.
And he ran the West Coast guy out.
Exactly.
To get the Fromm.
And to say he already got a guy to transfer already.
I would have had Fromm there. I mean, my goodness, it is the non-throwing. What wrist is it? That's hurt.
Yeah. It was his non-throwing wrist.
Yeah. So why not have him there? I mean, I don't think there's a question who should be the quarterback at Georgia. He's earned the right to be the starting quarterback.
And from Clemson's standpoint, and Matt Connolly made a fantastic point about this in the state newspaper, because he asked the folks at Clemson why they didn't send Kelly Bryant. If there's anybody who is as adept at talking to the media about any particular controversy, it's Kelly Bryant, because he already went through this mess last year when he was the one who was the heir apparent to Deshaun Watson, and he had to take basically all the way 14 weeks into the season questions about how are you going to replace Deshaun Watson. Dog, I got them to the freaking college football playoff. What more can you ask for? So in my mind, to me, it seems like coaches don't want to take the chance and have these guys, face the music a little bit, which I find it'll be.
And that's preparation if you want to play at the next level anyway.
It's weird. It's all very weird because there are no restrictions put on for those guys. They got to face the music whether they like it or not. Mm-hmm. We will face the music and talk a little about the NCAA's books, because I find some of these financials with these teams to be interesting. And I have a very funny question to ask you. Very funny question to ask you.
Let's suppose that
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. In 10 minutes, I'm going to get into this discussion, maybe 15 minutes, actually, it's more accurate. We'll get into this discussion about why the NFL and the NFLPA are feuding over the national anthem. And I'm going to put a different spin on it for you to think about this in a more secular way. Maybe secular is the right word. I don't know. In a more matter-of-fact way, and explain to you why this fight is happening. And then maybe you'll understand kind of where the NFL Players Association is coming from.
Business acumen sort of way.
A more business-like approach to this particular issue, and take it away from where obviously the passion grows, which comes to the Patriots' patriotic side.
This is take the emotion out of it.
Yes, I will get there in about 15 minutes, and hopefully we can come to some sort of conclusion as to why this is happening. But maybe we won't. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. 800-956-7266 is the phone number, your two-way sports talk telephone number here in the Palmetto State on this Wednesday, the 11th day of July, 2018. Before I get to the NCAA financials, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know I can because that's what we're supposed to do here. But can you explain to me the intrigue that surrounds the NBA Summer League? Do you find it intriguing?
No.
Okay.
Well, here's the point where I don't find it intriguing. If I want to see an individual talent in a different atmosphere than when they played in college, and maybe a couple of foreign players I've never seen before,
right? That's
the intrigue. What it doesn't get intriguing is to try to extrapolate what you see in the summer league and then try to put it in the context of the regular season, it has nothing.
Has absolutely
to do with anything. But why did somebody play so good in Vegas? And because they're playing for real now.
Like it's weird. Like I see beat writers from NBA teams over there. I've got personal friends of mine, actually, people who I would consider like friends who I know and proud to know. They're obsessed with this. I have one group of friends. They every year, people who go to Vegas during like the NFL playoffs or March Madness. This group of friends of mine, they go to Las Vegas every summer around the NBA Summer League, and they just watch basketball. They camp out in the Thomas and Mack Arena in Las Vegas and watch basketball that has no impact on the regular season whatsoever. Absolutely none. This is not like preseason football or spring football in college or preseason hockey or spring training baseball that has mild, impact on what will happen during the season. The NBA Summer League has no impact on the season at large.
The key point is that they're feeding the 24-hour monster.
Oh, they are.
We talked about the fact that there's there are no deadlines anymore. You just have to have that website freshen up
every day,
every few minutes,
yes,
or so. So they need to create stories and storylines, and where they are now is in the summer league.
It's a lot of spilled ink.
Yeah, the only thing I can tell you is sometimes you'll find some guy come out of nowhere, but those are rare occasions. A lot of the foreign players you see, they're going to go back to Europe or wherever they play and maybe get some more seasoning before they come back again.
Listen, Kevin Knox can throw down 40 and do highlight reel dunks all he wants. The Knicks are still going to be abject garbage this year. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And I'm glad you gave the answer you did, because if you didn't give the answer you did, and you said you actually you flip it on. If you said you flip it on, I was about to come across this table and be like, "What is wrong with you?"
You got to look at the individual talent, because some people say, "Have you ever seen that guy before?" I mean, he's some foreign guy. Yeah, I did in the summer league, because that's the only way I could have seen him. Because I don't sit there with the NBA TV and turn on Sunday afternoon when they have the foreign games on. I don't watch that. So I have to watch some of the guys who come from overseas to play in the summer leagues to see if anybody has a chance.
I tell you what, I've been getting some of the best sleep I've had in months as a result of just putting on the summer league at night and going to bed with it.
And see, here's the deal about. No, here's one of the funny things about.
Yeah.
There's simple explanations that people want to give all kind of credence or something else to players. I asked some guy was asking me, I noticed that that Trae Young's shot is off or whatever.
Right.
They say, what's wrong? I said, well, what is the one thing they said about Trae? Well, he's got to get stronger.
Right.
Playing a little basketball in high school, and I do mean little, guys' shots usually went off when they make them go in the weight room.
Right.
And I'm saying Trae has been in the weight room.
He's been in the weight room.
And he's got to stretch. And last night he showed that he can hit the shot because suddenly he's adjusting to somebody sending him into the weight room.
The NCAA financials came out yesterday, basically going into next year, and I find this interesting. This is for the fiscal year that ended in 2017. So once we get the tax documents back, we see the expenses, we see all the stuff that kind of comes across. And I find interesting that South Carolina, 16th highest revenues in all of college athletics, $136 million, very good year for them. They operated at about a $7 million advantage in the black, which was good for them. Clemson about $112 million, 112.6. They spent about 111.1, so they operated at about a $1.2 million surplus. A couple of other schools in the state operated in the black: College of Charleston, Citadel, USC Upstate. Those who were in the red inside the state: Coastal Carolina, South Carolina State, Winthrop, among the public universities in our state. Those who are private, that number is not disclosed. The only SEC program operating at a deficit last year was my alma mater, the University of Missouri. They operated with about a $5 million loss. They spent $102 million last year. A lot of it was facility upgrades, increase in coach's salary, but they only brought in $97 million. When you're already starting at a baseline of 40 in your revenue that you get from the SEC television deal. So they only brought in $57 million of their own money between ticket sales, donations, and all that. How do they belong in this conference, Tom?
They'll belong.
How? Because nobody cares there.
A lot of the and South Carolina went through this again.
Right.
Arkansas did. When you first get into the SEC and you figure out that we better get these facilities straight, and that's what Mizzou is doing. I mean, especially the stadium.
But I mean, look at a school like Clemson, which is half the size of Mizzou's. They brought in $112 million, and they have less sports. And they got to get they got to get some of the fat cats on the stick. Exactly. And that fundraising is key. One of the keys right now is when you hire these athletic directors that are bean counters. A lot of them have experience in what? Fundraising. But some have to have the talent to know coaching talent and to know how to deal with athletic program. Because what happened to Tennessee? They hired a guy who was great at fundraising, but he couldn't do anything else. He didn't know how to hire coaches and that sort of thing. Bad with personnel management. But here's the other part of this too, though, is that they also have an athletic director who puts his foot in his mouth. And so when you see this come out, and then you also see, oh, by the way, there's a $50,000 lawsuit, and again, that's a drop in the bucket for them. But that's something that has to get paid out. And oh, by the way, he's also operating in a $5 million deficit. Then you start to question, maybe there is some incompetence at the top going on in Boone County, Missouri. Maybe there is. Also, there has to be an adjustment involved with Missouri in that we talked about the fat cats. The passion has to be there. There is. It doesn't exist. There are some people that still can't figure out why we're not in the Big 12. They can't divorce themselves yet from that and develop the fact that they're in the Southeastern Conference. And you thought they should have had some iron strike when they won those 2 division titles early. All I know is that the passion of the fans here in South Carolina is basically they don't have the pinky that what they have in South Carolina. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. So I'm probed, okay? 800-956-7266. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. But I would like people to open up their mind a little bit. Because people are looking at this NFL and NFL Players Association fight all wrong, in my mind. Take out the issue at hand, which involves the peaceful protest of the national anthem because of inaccuracies involving social justice, which is the reason why NFL players are kneeling, et cetera, and so on. Let's take that whole part of it out, because you're not going to convince people on either side that they are wrong about this issue. I'm not saying this is not an indoctrination or an indictment on that issue whatsoever. What this is
what we have here
is
a failure to communicate.
Very much similar to that. The National Football League and the National Football Players Association is a collectively bargained pair of entities. As in, if the NFL wants to pass a rule, the NFL Players Association is empowered by their union to have a collectively bargained solution in order to resolve any issues and disputes involving policy that are made. The NFL basically tried to ram through a policy that they knew their players collectively were not going to like. And they tried to use some type of superseding authority, which according to the NFL's bylaws, they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not about the national anthem. This is not about social justice. This is about the NFL trying to create a precedent that they can just make all their own rules without any consent of the union. So the reason why the NFL Players Association filed an injunction and filed a grievance, a non-injury grievance to try and stop this rule from becoming part of the NFL's bylaws, has nothing to do about what the NFL Players Association feels about social justice, has nothing to do about the patriotism, has nothing to do about whether or not the players care, whether or not they kneel. All they're trying to do is restore the ability of the NFL and its Players Association to collectively bargain these issues. This has nothing to do with the anthem. It has everything to do with the fact that they are a collectively bargained entity. And if the NFL thinks they can just start passing laws and passing rules without the consent of the players' union, then the players' union is going to walk out. And by the way, we are on the cusp of the negotiation period for a new CBA. You best believe this issue's on the table for that. So from that perspective, that is why this issue is such a big deal. It has nothing to do about the way the players feel about the anthem. And I still contend that the NFL could have fixed this problem by just saying we're going to play the anthem while the players are in the locker room. And that would have fixed it. It would have nipped it in the bud. There would be no protests. There would be people who are on their own time protesting for social justice the way that they have to and the way that they're going to. There would have been none of this baloney, but instead, the NFL tried to go and supersede its authority, and I think they massively erred because all they did was make a problem worse.
Well, the key point is you said it right about as far as procedure is concerned, because this is where maybe the issue has to be placed way on the back burner. We're talking about procedure and any kind of procedure you have in business.
Thank you, Judge Haller.
And in any court proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
What's always the fear when you do something out of line or make an arbitrary decision? And that is you're setting a precedent.
Bingo.
And when you start to set a precedent that goes against the grain of what the collective bargaining agreement is, hold it, stop, because it comes back to that old theory. If you give them an inch, they'll take a yard. If you take a yard, they give you
a yard, they take a mile.
Yes. So that is the key there. The other thing is the issue itself. The NFL is what, 70-something years old? I can't recall.
1934, 1932, 1934, something like that.
Yeah.
80 years old-ish.
The players
85
have been standing on the field for the national anthem since 2009.
Yes.
It hasn't been this thing that they've done in the National Football League. And guess what? One of the great heroes of the military in Vietnam, in a guy who was captured by the Viet Cong, and we're talking about Senator John McCain of Arizona, was the one who did the inquiry with the Defense Department and found out, oh, you mean to tell me y'all paying professional leagues to show patriotism? and the National Football League was getting a big check. Starting when they asked the players to come out on the field for the national anthem. So once these people argue about patriotism, the patriotism that the National Football League was following was the patriotism of the almighty dollar at the point in fact, which really besmirches the issue about patriotism, because they were going after the money, the check they were getting from the Defense Department.
Lawrence, I have to address you on this here on Twitter. He tweets us at SportsTalkSC. You cannot hijack your workplace for political expression. It's the most useless and incompetent form of protest in my lifetime. It's just dumb. First Amendment protects speech from the government only. Let's again, this is not about the First Amendment.
No.
This is I'm not making this. The private companies have the ability to enforce policies involving speech. I'm not saying that. The problem and the difference with the way the NFL works is that the NFL and its players association have collective bargaining power. This was a rule that was not collective. The NFL cannot pass anything that goes on to its players without the consultation and approval of the union. That's in their bylaws. This is not about the national anthem. This is not about political expression. This is about the Players Association trying to protect its ability to collectively bargain the NFL's bylaws. It has nothing to do with the national anthem or politics or social justice or freedom of expression. It is the ability of the NFLPA to come up with a solution with the NFL that is collectively bargained. And that's the only issue here. It's nothing. Someone says this is the biggest waste of my time. Trust me, it is a waste of time because the NFL messed up. They screwed up. They tried to strong arm a rule into their players that the players had no consultation on.
That's the key, because let's throw the national anthem out of it.
Let's say take it any issue on the table. So let's say it's a uniform issue, or let's say it's an issue involving the rules of the game. Let's just say the NFL just wants to change a rule, like the catch rule. If that didn't go on the auspices of the NFL Players Association, there'd be a riot. So again, this is not about the national anthem. This is about the NFL tried to strong arm a rule through without consulting the players' union. And all that does is continue the fracture and the enmity that exists between the NFL and its players. And that all that does is make the upcoming CBA negotiations that much more complicated.
It's going to be tougher. There's no doubt about it.
And I'm saying right now, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a work stoppage because of how basically far apart DeMaurice Smith and Roger Goodell might as well be on opposite sides of the moon from each other right now, because that's where they are, and that's where the players are. Because again, think about that quote that Bob McNair said in that owners meeting about the quote inmates running the asylum and inmates running the prison, or whatever, because he bogarted the meaning on that, and and basically saying that that is representing where the NFL thought that they had the power, but they don't. They don't have that power. They do have the power to restrict political speech as long as that power is collectively bargained.
Exactly.
And that's the problem, and that's why the NFLPA is doing what it's doing. Come back, we'll do some recruiting, a couple other things to get on. We're going to talk to Boston College's voice, John Meter Perrill, coming up here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
My man just doesn't get it, man. He doesn't get it. He said, you are dead wrong. The NFL has a right to protect its business from deviant behavior. Being loud doesn't make it right. And I said, they absolutely have the power if it's collectively bargained with the players' union. Take the anthem out of this. Put any other issue in its place. And basically replace saying the NFL is trying to strong-arm an issue. For example, when the NFL wants to make a rule change, guess who they have to meet with? The Players Association and the Competition Committee and the owners. And the Competition Committee has to make a presentation to the owners in order to get any ruling passed. And oh, by the way, it also has to go beyond an owner's vote. So it is very, very hard to get rules passed in the National Football League. That's why, to be brutally honest, that's why it's very, very hard, and the NFL rulebook is so very messed up, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, the fact that they thought that they could just kind of push this through and get no reaction whatsoever is foolhardy. And this is from Keith, who writes us from Greenville. The players have nothing to do with the ruling. The ruling is to levy a fine against a team, not players. They knew that what they were doing when it was structured this way for this obvious reason. Well, I don't understand how they can still make that rule. How can they make a rule that applies to the players but punishes the team without consulting the players? That doesn't make any sense. You look at me with a dumb face because you know I'm right.
No, I'm thinking of people can't understand the uniqueness of what inevitably is an entertainment business.
Mm-hmm.
And people, especially in the entertainment business, and in some cases other businesses as well, those who have the talent to pull off this business also have a vested interest in letting their thoughts be known into the business. They're not just plain workers who punch a clock,
right?
Which is what people want to put players in.
And
that box doesn't work as far as that.
And the other thing too that you have to understand, and people will bring the ratings argument into it, and I think it has more to do with cord cutting and the way people watch and consume media more than it does anything having to do with these issues. But think about this. Think about if people who are in support of the players kneeling are people who are I'm sorry. Think of if it's more than people who are in support of the national anthem. Think about it if it's more than those people who are turning off the NFL. Because I guarantee you there's more of those people who are actually turning off just because they're tired of the whole issue altogether. The fact that there's no resolution. They could have nipped this in the bud. They could have said, you know what, we're not playing the anthem with players on the field. Go back to the way things were. And that would have nipped it in the bud. Let's go to Barry, who's calling us in Fort Mill here to start off Sports Talk. What's up, Barry? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. My blood's boiling a little bit. But you're absolutely right about what you're saying about a collective bargaining agreement. I'm a former union president, and that's basically the way every contract is structured. You have a management rights section in the contract, but before a company or anybody can make any kind of changes, they have to notify the union, and then they have to try to negotiate. And if they don't reach a settlement or anything, the union's got the right to take them right straight into arbitration. But where a whole lot of this stuff's been coming from is, I won't use all the expletives I'd like to use, but the current president we got, he thinks he's a king. And all these owners have kowtowed down to him, and he got them under the impression they can come in and do anything they want to do. But right frankly, it disturbed me that the players' union have waited so long to address this. They should address this long ago when it first came out.
Well, no, it's and we appreciate the call, and Barry, I really appreciate you bringing the union perspective, because here's the irony of this. And I don't want to go political, but it's funny how people who normally are very pro-union are negligent to see the fact that this is a union issue and not a politics issue. But in my mind, I look at it and I say, hey, take the anthem, make this a non-emotional issue. Make this a black and white issue, not black and white as in the color of people's skin. Make this an issue of people who are seeing an issue that is, hey, trying to be pushed through and strong arm through. Okay, make that the issue, and then say it's something that was not collectively bargained that they're trying to strong arm through. Anytime you have a union, there needs to be dialogue. There needs to be, like Barry said, a manage of rights,
especially on the issue that can
be divisive.
Be divisive, especially.
Like, I'm surprised they took such a lack of sensitivity toward that. In my mind,
I think probably what got into their heads is sometimes we all are victims of, lack of a better term, vanity.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to show everybody, we run this ship, we write the checks. Yeah and no. But if you look at the contract, yeah, you have to go through machinations in order to get everybody on the same page.
Let's go to Tippy, who's calling us in Edgefield. Tippy, what's up? You're on Sports Talk. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Just a couple comments and then a question for you.
Sure.
If you're for the players, buy tickets, show up. If you're not, hey, buying the tickets is what pays the salary. A question is, when they get fined or anything like that, where exactly does that money go? I mean,
it goes to
NASCAR and the NFL.
It goes to charities. It goes to charities that are sponsored by the league.
Okay. I was just wondering because, I mean, you know, I'm more NASCAR than football and all that mess, but I'm like, you know, they get $2.3 million fine, and then, then they sit there and act like they ain't making no money anywhere. So
no,
I was just wondering about that.
That goes out of the NFL's coffers to charities. That's all charity money. And again, like I said,
And that was agreed. And that was another instance where the Players Association agreed upon with the owners that's where that money would go.
Let's go to Glenn, who's calling from North Charleston. Glenn, you're on Sports Talk. What's up?
Hey, Will. Hey, Professor.
Good day. Good day.
Good day. What's up?
Hey, I just want to tell y'all, Dog Day started yesterday. And another thing, that might be why the NFL and everybody's all up in arms, makes everything harder, you know?
Yeah.
But to me, I think they had a good plan where the players stay in during the national anthem, and then after that, then they could go ahead and run on the field. I think that would be correct protocol. I was in the Navy and the Army, and I was trying to get with my dad. My dad was in the Navy, Army, and Air Force, and I was trying to tie him, but I went as high as a colonel in the Army. So
congratulations. Thank you for your service.
And I'm a disabled colonel in the Army National Guard. But my deal is I have integrity and respect, which was instilled in me in the military to not take a knee or anything with the national anthem. I don't even mind saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't get the deal. I'm blind because of the service, and I deal with inequality all the time, even worse than what if you're a different color or creed, or and I'm also a Native American. I'm part Sioux, and like my mom, and I deal with inequality issues all the time, but there's no need to take that and disrespect the country.
Again,
that's why the ratings are going down.
Now, Glenn, again, this has nothing to do with the issue at hand. It has everything to do with the fact that the NFL Players Association is angry that the NFL is trying to strong arm an issue through without being collectively bargained. Listen, you have no idea the way I feel about the anthem issue. I could be for the anthem. I could be against the anthem. You have no idea. But what I am for is the fact that the NFLPA feels like it got screwed. And that's the bottom line. And they know they got screwed. And they're trying to make sure that the NFL doesn't screw them on another issue that actually might be important to the success of its game. So in my mind, you have to take out the anthem part of this issue and realize that the NFLPA is basically calling out the NBA, or the NFL rather, on its BS. Hour 2 coming up next.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, as we keep you entertained on a Wednesday, although some might find this to be comedic and or comedy night. Those people might be missing the point. As we continue here on Sports Talk for a Wednesday, Willie P. along with Professor Tom Hayes. Phil Kornbluth returns to us again on Monday. A couple of recruiting notes here for you before we get to our next topic. We're also going to talk to John Metter-Perrell of the Boston College Football Radio Network. He'll join us coming up at 7:20. We'll talk about the kind of bogus lawsuit being levied by the fine folks at Louisville, or at least the Louisville players who aren't happy about the vacation. And no, I'm not talking about a vacation to Aruba or the Bahamas, but we're talking more about the vacation of victories when it comes to the lawsuit that took place between that. We talk here on Sports Talk here. We were talking earlier about the NFL anthem and the NFLPA anthem stuff, and I'm wondering what Todd from Great Falls has to say about the issue. He calls us at 800-956-7266. Todd, good evening. How are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. What's up?
Hey, man. Well, talking about this, you kind of pushed a button with me. I do not disagree that the NFL has mishandled this, and I don't understand all the workings of that. But I do have a little different take on the total cost. And if you wouldn't mind, if you'd indulge me for 1 second, let me tell you what I think.
I'll indulge.
Before you scream at me.
I'll indulge.
And go up 3 hours. Okay. I'm thinking that the Players Association is culpable also, because the leadership, when this kneeling started taking place and the firestorm it caused, knowing that they had another bargaining session coming up, they should have got their hands around it. Talked to the players and said, man, you are hurting everybody in this union because revenue's going down, attendance is going down, everything's going down. We're going to lose money on the next TV contract if people keep cutting it off. Why didn't they go in trying to get ahead of this and put a stop to it before then? You cannot tell me that they weren't owners calling and talking to the leaders of this union saying, man, you got to get your hands around this. We got to come together and do something. So I think it's both ends. I mean, I just don't put it all on NFL, and goodness, I mean, they've kind of messed up everything. They've stuck their finger in here for a while, but I think you got to go back to the Players Association too, and the individual players involved, and they should have done something about that, and there should have been a come to Jesus meeting with everybody, and I don't think we would be where we are right now. And that's all I had to say, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for the call, Todd. I'll allow Pro the first. I will cede my time to Pro before I respond.
First of all, again, it is interesting how we have two dysfunctional type of views about the NFL. The NFL's gates are going down and that sort of thing because the tickets are being outpriced. Because of these Thursday night games, the product isn't as good. And there are some people who could care less about the anthem issue are not watching NFL football.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some gentlemen out there, and I'm not going to mention names because I'm not going to start anything, but there are certain leaders and entities, leaders of countries, see things happening in a certain way, and they pounce on the issue and then extrapolate from this. This is why the business model is going down. NFL was losing money before this anthem issue.
That's basically the answer that I will give to Todd, is that the reason why the NFL Players Association and its union leaders didn't go to the players to, quote, fix a problem is because they didn't see a problem.
Mm-hmm.
They saw no problem with its players exercising, the right to a peaceful protest, because there was nothing in the NFL's policies that denied them of that. Now, in the NBA, for example, when Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, decided to not stand for the anthem because of particular religious objections involving the U.S. and its involvement overseas, there were conversations that took place between Jackson, their union rep, and the NBA, and they invoked they came to an agreement on a policy where they said, we'll let you stand up, but you just won't have to like put your hand over your heart, or you can put your head down or something like that. I forget the way that was resolved. But again, the NFL acted, or the NBA acted swiftly.
Well, he would stay in the locker room.
Or
before the anthem, or stand in the hall, the entrance there.
Yeah, exactly.
Then after it was over, he'd walk out.
They acted swiftly, but they acted with an open mind.
Yes,
and and they acted with an open mind, and they also acted in a spirit of trying to come with a solution.
That's
it was not a solutions-oriented thing. And I'm not saying that you're wrong in saying that the NFL Players Association erred from that standpoint, and saying that they did not necessarily they didn't act with enough arms over this issue. But I will say this: they didn't think that there was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a problem. It was only a problem to those who didn't agree with the issue. Now, the problem here is that the NFL is trying to strong-arm a rule that was not collectively bargained,
without following the proper procedure that is indelibly in the contract.
800-956-7266. Jack is calling from Bowen, and that's not Bowen calling from Jack either. What's up, Jack? How are you?
It's Lake Bowen. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
You probably going to say I'm just wrong, or whatever you want to call me, but I will not bargain with anyone under any circumstances to stand up for the national anthem. I don't care where they're from, where they're going, under any circumstances, none. NFL, player, whatever. If I have to bargain with them to stand, I'm through with them. Thank you.
Well, that's what the Defense Department did with the NFL. They bargained and wrote a check to the NFL to have the players stand out on the field. That's why this issue ticks me off, because when you talk about patriotism, to me, that has nothing to do with trying to make a dollar. And that's what the NFL did.
They say they were patriotic where it was convenient to them. And by them, I mean their wallets.
That is correct.
And that's the issue. Again, that's the part of this that I think people aren't getting, is the fact that this has more to do with the NFL exercising its muscle than it does the particular issue. It has nothing to do with the flag. This has nothing to do with the flags. This has nothing to do with patriotism. And again, you'll never know where I sit on the issue. For all you know, I could be a 45er. I could be somebody who said that there's no reason for them to sit for the anthem and all this baloney. But if there's one thing I do understand, I understand the way that interoffice politics work, and I understand the way union dealings work. And there was a collectively bargained entity in our company that tells us not to talk about politics, whether it's outwardly or on entities that involve our company. And that was something that was collectively bargained and collectively come to. I understand that. That problem with the National Football League is that they did not do that. They did not go through the proper protocol and procedure. They just decided, we're going to make this rule happen, and you're going to have to deal with it and like it. That's the issue. It has nothing to do about the anthem. And again, I respect people's opinions about the issue at hand.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that this is not about the issue at hand. This is about an entity trying to exercise undue power. Has nothing to do about the anthem. And that's the thing that people have to take that issue out of your mind. Take it out of your mind. Replace it with anything else that the NFL could have exercised as part of their protocol and as part of their rules and their bylaws. Replace that there and say, hey, the NFL tried to strong arm a rule on the Players Association, and the players aren't happy about it because they weren't consulted.
And the Players Association would not have come to the table to argue in the auspices of having players lean. That's not what the issue was about. It's about coming to a conclusion of what you want the players to do, and what the Players Association would there's no edict to say, well, we're going to do this. No, it's not no demanding. It's going through the proper procedures.
We'll talk with the Boston College Eagles voice next about whether or not their game against Clemson is big.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Programming note and reminder, we add our 29th and 30th affiliates here to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 105.5 The Roar, the official flagship station of the Clemson Tigers, is coming on board with us beginning next week. Remember, they will be tape delaying us from 7 until 9 p.m., so they'll do the first hour of our program from 6 to 7, and then, our 6 to 7 hour, rather, they'll do from 7 until 8, and then they'll do our second hour from 8 until 9, so be sure to be a part of that. Again, thanks again to the folks at The Roar for making this possible, and we're very much looking forward to our relationship starting with them again on Monday when we both be both at ACC and SEC Media Days, and we're continuing our look at the ACC and SEC opponents of South Carolina and Clemson. We're going to go with another Clemson opponent today and talk about the Boston College Eagles. 7-6 last year. Their game with Clemson hotly contested. It was a 7-7 game in the fourth quarter in Death Valley, and then Clemson ended up rattling off 27 unanswered to win 34-7. Clemson gets them in Chestnut Hill in deep November. Their radio voice, John Meter-Perrell, joining us here on Sports Talk. And John, I don't know about you, but that is one, if I'm a Clemson fan, that game is circled on my calendar. And if I'm a Boston College fan, one could be for Atlantic Division supremacy late in the year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a great point. I think a lot of people are sleeping on BC. I know it's early. I was I guess I was encouraged to see Phil Steele, who keeps a close eye on everything. He has them 23rd in his top 25, and I noticed on Twitter and social media, a lot of people were surprised by that. But you know what? They really shouldn't be. If you look what BC has coming back, and it sounds like but they, first of all, have the best running back in the conference, and if not the best running back in the nation coming back in A.J. Dillon. I know a lot of people are talking about Bryce Love, and they should be, and Jonathan Taylor, and they should be. Clemson has a great back in ETN, but A.J. Dillon, for my money, showed what he's all about last year in the last half of the season. And imagine that building block and the fact that BC has every offensive lineman coming back as well. So I think they're loaded. Granted, I'm a little biased. That Clemson game was definitely a good peek inside the window of what they have to do this year in terms of being a little bit more explosive on offense. They showed that at the end of the year. They have that in their wheelhouse a little bit, especially with Dillon as the bell cow in the backfield. So I think there's a lot of good things to come for BC.
Yeah, it's funny. I asked this of Syracuse voice Matt Park yesterday, just from the standpoint of their victory over Clemson. But what did taking Clemson to the fourth quarter on the road teach this team about itself? Because they went on to win 3 road games in the conference at tough places to play: Louisville, Virginia, Syracuse. That's not a bad slate. I know that a couple of the home losses are kind of head-scratching, especially the NC State one where you had the team right where you wanted them. But in my mind, that Clemson game opened a lot of eyes and I think opened up some confidence for the Eagles.
I think it most definitely did. I think it really hurt BC. The NC State loss was problematic because Anthony Brown went down that game. He had the knee injury, tore his ACL. If he had stayed in that game and had not gotten hurt, there's no doubt in my mind they win that game. Pretty much going away, actually. Anthony Brown was getting a lot of confidence. He only completed 52% of his passes. He played as a redshirt freshman. That's an aspect of the BC game that needs to improve this year. The downfield passing game, again, the explosiveness aspect of that, so they can complement it with Dillon. But yeah, they certainly proved that they could win on the road, and that had been a problem under Steve Adazio, winning on the road in the ACC specifically. So it was a great confidence boost, and everybody around this team and everybody in that locker room this year, they know that they have a lot to look forward to. It all comes down, and stop me if you've heard this before, staying healthy and quarterback play.
Yeah, I was looking at the point totals toward the end of the year for the Eagles, and I said if this team can get this offense going, and the defense has perennially been salty, I say this team could be dangerous. But one of the things that worry me is the secondary, because you lost some talent, especially at corner after last year. Do you think they had the replacements to replenish that cornerback spot?
I think that's valid. I think they definitely did lose. They lost NFL talent, and Isaac Yiadom, who was a third-round pick at Denver, and Cameron Moore, who was a late-round pick at the New Orleans Saints. So, and Moore got hurt last year. The good news, in fact, that he not that he got hurt, but the fact that they could bolster their experience back there with Tajamir Torres and Hamp Cheevers. They both saw a lot of run during the last half of the season. Those two guys are going to play a lot this year in the secondary. And you know what? They got two of the best safeties in the conference. Lucas Dennis, 7 interceptions last year, second in the country. Will Harris, senior, should be first-team preseason All-ACC, led the nation in fumble recoveries with 4. He's a ubiquitous presence in the secondary. So I'm very confident in their safeties. Corners will probably take a little bit more game readiness for them to really become more consistent. But overall, their defense is loaded. They're maybe a little bit shy up front in terms of depth, but I think pretty much every team in the conference is, with the exception of Clemson. But you know, Zach Allen's the headliner there. He came back. He would have been a second-round pick, and decided to come back to BC for his senior year, and should be an All-American.
Joined by John Meter-Perrell, voice of the Boston College Eagles, here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Looking at the schedule, John, looking at obviously the first couple of games, I would say, tenable test to start. But the thing that concerns me is that you got to play Wake Forest on a short week. Again, it's after playing an FCS foe in Holy Cross. Then you got to go to Purdue, who's no slouch. Temple, sandwiched between a road trip to NC State. We'll know a lot more about where Boston College sits in this conference by the time we hit the second weekend in October.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think they get a very nice soft landing. The pillow games to start with UMass and Holy Cross. They haven't played Holy Cross since Doug Flutie's senior year back in '86, so that could be ugly for the Crusaders. But that third game that you mentioned at Wake Forest, I'd circle that as the game of the year, and I know it's week 3, but that is a must-win game for BC. Absolutely must-win, because it gets them propelled. They win a game at Wake Forest. You win that game on a Thursday night. You go down there on ESPN, and you prove to yourself that you can win in conference again. Wake Forest, not a great team. Always kind of a dicey place to play. So if they can win that game, you're looking at 3-0 most likely going into Purdue and Temple and NC State. You know, I see this team at worst, guys, going 5-1 to start the year. At worst, I think a lot of BC fans think they should go 6-0. That's really probably the expectation. I think that's the expectation of the coaching staff as well. This coaching staff, since I've been here, is by far the most enthused I have seen them about their talent.
Well, I ask you a question in reality, and then maybe a question that to some fans is unreality, but E.J. Perry's maturation, is he going to be the quarterback? And can Steve Adazio somehow, with that defense he has, find the next Matt Ryan?
You know, it's funny. Matt Ryan's senior year, last year they averaged 387 yards a game. That was the most yards per game they gained since Matt Ryan's senior year in 2007. So, yes, the quarterback position has been a conundrum. It has certainly been an issue where they've gone through a lot of guys here in the last decade, but they feel like Anthony Brown is going to be a terrific player. E.J. Perry's a good backup. He only saw 1 game action last year against UConn in the blowout at Fenway Park. Local kid, was an all-Massachusetts performer. They love his grit. They love the fact that he's tough. He's a great athlete, an all-state performer in baseball and basketball. So he's a good backup, but the Ryan comparison coming in, they have a kid named Matt Valecchi, who's a quarterback out of Fordham Prep in New York City, and he looks very much like Matt Ryan. I'm not saying he's as good as Matt Ryan, but he has that 6'4", 220-pound build. He's lengthy, maybe a little unheralded in high school, but he can throw the rock. I know a lot of the coaching staff is going to be very enthused to see him play in the fall camp and see what he can do, because they get a drop-back type kid in the program. Look out.
Meter, we got to run. Appreciate the time as always, and keep things good for us up there in Chestnut Hill. I'll be up there having a lobster roll here in a couple of weekends and catching a game at Fenway Park. So appreciate the time. We'll talk to you closer to the season.
Well, be sure to reach out when you do that. We can show you a good time up here.
We'll have to. Absolutely. It's John Meter-Perrell joining us here on Sports Talk. That comes your way here on the 10th of November. Could you imagine a 6-0 BC after wins over NC State and Louisville, especially one on the road?
Have a lot of coaches taking the BC if they have to play BC.
Look at you. Look at you. You're so cheeky sometimes. Have you ever worked for an entity that made 3 name changes in the time that you worked for them?
No, but I've worked for a radio station that had 3 different owners.
That's interesting. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We're brought to you by the fine folks at Founders Federal Credit Union, who want you to know that they're honoring our servicemen and women with the Founders Military Mortgage. Apply online at foundersfcu.com/mortgage or at a Founders location where a qualified mortgage loan officer will help you through the application process. Allow me to render some recruiting for you. Clemson and NC State are hooked up in a old-fashioned head-to-head recruiting battle with cornerback Shaheem Battle of Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Both coaching staffs have been in regular contact with him. He's currently in Arizona practicing with the U.S. national basketball team for the Under-19 World Championships upcoming in Mexico City. Once he gets back, though, he's going to restart the football recruiting process. He says he's going to visit NC State the week of July 23rd and also will be at Clemson that week for their cookout, annual recruiting cookout on the 27th. He says he has set a date of December 15th for a decision announcement, but says that a decision could come sooner than that. Johnny Dixon, cornerback out of Tampa Bay, says that USC wants him bad despite a knee injury that he suffered during the basketball season. He was injured last December, but Travaris Robertson said he is still hot on the pursuit. Made an official visit to USC in June. The end of this month, he'll visit Florida and Miami unofficially, and will also schedule later officials with them. He also has an official at Penn State, November 28th. Also, Ohio State and Alabama are on his short list. He could also come back to USC for a game before making his commitment, which should come, he says, no later than 2 weeks into the season. As for his knee, he says he's been rehabbing and running in the past month and will be cleared for football activities in a couple of weeks. And Juwan Gary still is yet to make an announcement in advance of the Peach Jam in North Augusta, which started today. We're expecting any moment, whether it's today or sometime this week, for a commitment announcement from the Gray Collegiate Star, 6'6". He has a Final Five of USC, Clemson, Bama, Virginia Tech, and NC State. Corn caught up with Gary's coach, Deion Bethea, who talked with him on Monday. He said he's going to talk with his mom, and I guess they're going to come up with a day by Wednesday to kind of let everybody know. He says everybody wants to make sure it's the right decision and also making sure that everything else can get together as far as making sure the right people are involved. Bethea says he still thinks it's up in the air. I think he and his family trying to make sure that whenever it is, it's going to be a great fit. He visited Bama in early June. Avery Johnson made a big impact, of course, with the NBA background. But the USC and Clemson staffs have had ample opportunities to impress Gary. Of course, Bethea mentioned that Gary has been recruited by South Carolina for 4 years, and Clemson's completely been on him as well. Steve Smith has been his lead recruiter there. And, of course, Gary stands out as one of the top recruits in the state of South Carolina in the class of 2019. Also, 6'6" Josiah James of Porter Gown, 6'7" Christian Brown of Lower Richmond, Malcolm Wilson of Ridgeview, and, of course, 6'2" Trey Hannibal of Hartsville, who is already committed to USC. That is recruiting for this Wednesday. Be sure to check out our website, SportsTalkSC.com, for any recruiting updates, and also our Twitter, which has recruiting updated around the clock 24/7, 365, 366 in leap years. And that is when you use the hashtag STRecruiting on our Sports Talk SC Twitter. Of course, Sports Illustrated, from ST to SI, they had dueling articles come out today. Andy Benoit, good friend of mine, and Andy Staples, better friend of mine. They're NFL and college football prognosticators and reporters, respectively, talked about the differences between the NFL and college football. And while Andy Benoit says that he admires the pageantry that exists in college football, he thinks that the NFL is a better game because of the fact that the NFL is comprised of the top 2% of FBS players, and that only 1.6% of draft-eligible players actually are drafted every year. The tradition, the community, most people say that college beats pro, but he says that from an entertainment standpoint, he believes that the career lengths, number of teams, number of players on a roster, length of a game, feet inbounds for a catch, overtime format, field width, all those things delve into why the NFL makes college football better. Of course, Andy Staples comes back and says this is all a bunch of hogwash. He tries to basically thwart all of these things. And in my mind, I've dabbled with this over the course of my career just because I've covered both extensively. And I will say the kind of fan passion you get in college football, especially at big college football epicenters, Alabama, Auburn, even here in the States, South Carolina, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, Southern Cal, maybe not Southern Cal, but, maybe some of these other places that have college football where there is no pro team present, you see a passion there that in my mind does not exist in the vast majority of NFL cities.
I would agree with you. And plus, these are not entities with the threat of franchise removal.
Yes.
Yeah. So
they're not being held hostage by, I'm not going to get into it.
But as I said before, it tickles me when he says the top 2% of college. Well, some of those top 2% don't make it, but guys coming out of Podunk State make it.
Yes.
So it's an inexact science any way you put it. The key point is right now, the NFL is its own worst enemy, as I said before, because I think these Thursday night games are a joke. Once in a while on a Thanksgiving, I can see it. But you could tell guys going through the motion on Thursday night just to survive after being beat up on the Sunday. And that takes away from me the quality of the professional game. But you're right. The emotional aspect of college football, NFL can't shake a stick at it. Well, some cities, yes, I can understand. You go to a Giants or Jets game, either they're gonna be there, booing or cheering, whatever. But college towns, you can't beat it.
Well, and here's the other thing too, and I got into the college football game very late relative to other people who maybe have grown up in that atmosphere. I grew up in a mostly pro town, mostly pro household. There wasn't a lot of college football chatter in my youth until I got to college. And I went to a place that would probably be considered a very milquetoast college football atmosphere. But even still, as a milquetoast atmosphere at Missouri in 2005, when they were still in the Big 12 and pretty much considered an also-ran up until that point, there was still an amount of passion that I'd never seen anywhere else. And then, of course, I went and exposed myself to not exposed myself, but I was exposed to other atmospheres such as Alabama, Texas A&M. I've been to college games at Ole Miss, Nebraska, any of the other places, Tennessee, that I've been to, and of course, South Carolina and Clemson now. And again, I've been to plenty of NFL games. And while you have, it means more than just having hooligans who tailgate. It means more. It's more than that. It's the fact that you can walk up and down the streets, whether it's in Clemson on College Ave or whether it's on Main Street in Columbia. Unless you're a sports bar, it's barren. And if you're a sports bar, the place is full because guess what else is full? The stadium. And anybody who can't get into the stadium is either 1, in a tailgate lot, 2, in a sports bar, or home watching the game. And you don't get that in maybe, I would say, of the NFL cities / regions that are out there that approach a college level. I would say Pittsburgh, Green Bay, New England only recently. And I really can't give you another that's on that level.
Denver.
Still, that's a more recent. That's since John Elway phenomenon.
Yeah, Denver.
I would say Denver is a since John Elway phenomenon, and I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that their college teams have been abjectly awful since Cordell Stewart left college. Sorry. They won a national championship because of a 5th down, and I'm still a little salty about that. But again, those maybe 4. Maybe 4.
If you want to see the passion of college football, especially Southern college football, try to go to Atlanta one Saturday and hit as many sports bars as you can, and every team is represented at somebody's sports bar.
Crazy. There's a bogus lawsuit going around that Pro and I are going to debunk, if you will. We'll come that and close up shop next on Sports Talk.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
It's a couple little hodgepodge odds and ends that we want to clear up on Sports Talk here, South Carolina Radio Network. Javon Kinlaw, Fashion Police, changing his number. He's no longer going to wear a 99, which I think is the most, I would say, I want to say a word that I can't use here, but I think he makes him a hard dude. I would say
it grows on you.
I think it's a cool thing that he wore 99. Guess what? He's not going to do that. He's going to go wear number 3. 3
is
so he's gonna basically join DJ Wanham as guys who are on the defensive line and wear single-digit numbers.
It used to be that DBs and quarterbacks wore the single-digit numbers.
Yeah.
Was this? I don't want to attribute it to him, but because I'm provincial, did Clowney start all this with the 7, with the single
maybe
number? I don't know, but somehow it still throws me off to see big linemen. Maybe they think it makes them look thinner.
I don't know.
A single digit.
I don't know.
I thought the 99 would make you look.
Some other numbers that we did not see in the spring. Josh Vann is going to wear number 6, a freshman out of Tucker, Georgia. That's interesting. Carry on Joyner, as you knew from the spring, is going to wear number 7. JT eBay is going to wear number 29, the transfer from Rice. Nick Harvey is going to wear his number 1. So he and Debo Samuel will not be able to be on the field at the same time. Again, that's the whole weird thing about these number issues. We had that happen with Clemson and Ray McLeod. He had to have a different number on defense because somebody wore his offensive number on defense or whatever. So that's why some of these things kind of come into play. Of course, you have the 2 number 8s there with Wanham and Rodriguez Davis on the South Carolina roster. And oh, by the way, Stephen Davis Jr., after coming back on the team in spring, is now off the football team. So
we hardly knew you.
Yeah,
both times.
As I said, this stint on the team I think was shorter than the last one. Not to be again, I don't mean to be flippant about that, but again, it seems like maybe there are some influences in that man's life who probably want him to play football more than he does. Maybe. Just having the father who's an NFL football player, I don't know. I don't want to pass judgment on the young man.
No, and some kids, they want to do something else because people have to understand playing major college football is a tremendous investment in time and spirit because your body has to be up early in the morning and it's got to hit some weights. It's got to learn the playbook. It's a lot of stuff you got to go through. And yeah, your parents would like for you to work on your education while you're there too.
J.C. Horn, Alpharetta, Georgia defensive back at freshman. He's going to wear number 7 as well. Recindo Lewis at 42. We saw him in the spring. Hank Manos, the offensive lineman freshman at Chapin. He will wear number 70. R.J. Roderick's going to wear 10. Darius Rush, 81. Again, just looking at some of these other numbers here that we didn't see in the spring, that looks like to be about it. Dylan Wanham, the DJ Wanham's brother, he will wear 79, the Tucker, Georgia offensive lineman. Did you see this story about Danny Ford, what he's doing? Growing hemp. He is one of 20 farmers in South Carolina to be selected to participate in the 2018 South Carolina Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. He and his family have 54,000 hemp seeds planted and have an impressive 170 rows of hemp plants. He says, "This is the hardest thing I've ever done, to tell you the truth. We started doing this and learning about the positive effects on people and the oil that we're going to make, and that will be used for medicine. This is not, by the way, this is the medical version of the whole marijuana growth program.
Cannabis.
Yeah, basically.
Oil they make from.
This is not for recreational use."
To grow hemp to make rope, didn't you?
Yes, still have that, but they also, again, the reason for growing it is, again, the cannabis oil has healing properties, and many have actually said that it actually helps reduce the effects of CTE. There's some studies that have been put on that, at least not necessarily the effects of CTE, but the effects of concussions and brain situations. So that's something that's an admirable thing. I found it interesting that that's the hardest thing he's ever done, because I felt like, national championship might have been.
Well, it's almost
harder.
feeling that I maybe he was just about farming, and I thought he was more with his farm was in the livestock than use my Western term than being a sod buster.
At SportsTalkSC on Twitter, I'm getting a tweet about other NFL cities. We were talking about NFL cities that have a collegiate-like atmosphere. I left out Kansas City only because those fans are very self-important. Seattle, yeah. Seattle's, again, more of a Johnny-come-lately in that regard.
Is it Seattle or the way that stadium is built that holds noise?
I had to say, they have some architectural advantages to their to their fury. Pittsburgh, we said. Buffalo, I'll give because they really have nothing else up there that's relevant or cool or anything other than the Anchor Bar, which is fantastic, that invented the Buffalo Wing, and Oakland, which
Well, you mean the fans that really have been treated unroyally bad?
Yeah, I think that's more of a. I think that's more of a. Their fury is probably more directed towards their ownership and their city for completely botching that franchise situation. But who knows what happens when they go to Vegas?
When they moved to Los Angeles, you had the feeling that most of that crowd actually spent money and either drove or flew down from Oakland.
Right.
They didn't look like Los Angeles fans when there. It looked like they were Raiders fans.
A group of former Louisville men's basketball players have filed a lawsuit against the NCAA over the vacation of the 2013 National Championship and Final Four appearance that got thrashed after Louisville's involvement in the FBI probe. Luke Hancock is on this also. He was the most outstanding player in the 2013 championship year. The attorney who is part of this says if all we get is this championship back for Louisville and the players in the city and Luke's MVP back, that's going to be plenty of us, basically saying that the wrongfully vacated the plaintiff's wins, honors, and awards. Of course, this was discovered part of the escort scandal investigation that was just part of the reason why Rick Pitino was summarily deposed. I don't know. I've never been a fan of the, quote, vacating of wins and all that. I find it to be somewhat weird and a weird justice miscarriage there. But the other part of this, too, is that the NCAA has done very, very poorly when it comes to deterring schools from wrongdoing. They've had very, very inconsistent policies.
Yes.
And, you look no further than what happened with North Carolina and their scandal, which they've yet to be punished for and probably won't ever be punished for because they're a golden goose. Part of me almost wants Louisville to win this lawsuit, this bogus lawsuit, just to kind of shove it at the NCAA. Though, maybe it will give the NCAA reasoning to basically, maybe in the future we'll just take more scholarships away, or we'll lengthen years of probation. Because again, the vacating of victories, vacating of championships, the stripping of banners, I don't know what that does other than prevent you from selling merchandise.
Well, you're right about that. I think I go back to Mel Kiper Jr. one time. They asked him, so-and-so had to vacate. He said, what does that mean? That doesn't erase what I saw on the field or the court that tells me that they weren't the best team.
I say Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy still happened in my mind. It didn't get erased like the movie Men in Black with the little thing there.
The
Emery Scrubber deal.
Yeah. And see, let's face it, we've seen a lot of teams, even when they have had infractions, actually boost their team. They got a slap on the wrist, and suddenly they start winning games and start recruiting better players.
You know why I'm excited for tomorrow's program? Because we get to talk to the Florida beat writer Robbie Andrew. My favorite program to talk about.
Favorite whipping boy program.
Oh, be sure to listen tomorrow. It's going to be interesting. Chopping it with Jaws.